Thunder cracked through the Himalayan night as Maya clutched her father's final letter. The flickering oil lamp trembled in the wind's breath, its light barely holding the darkness at bay. She had arrived too late. "The monks," said he, whispered her name with his last breath. Her knees buckled. The scroll in her trembling hands read, "The peace you seek is not in answers. It's in the silence between your wounds." Her breath caught. Her heart shattered. Why now? Why this? Memories of laughter, and then abandonment, flooded her. She had wandered for decades praying he'd seek her forgiveness. Now she was left with ink and ashes. A sudden breeze scattered the scroll's edge, revealing an ancient key sewn to its seam, golden, weathered, sacred. What door had he never spoken of? And why had he kept this from her? Her tears were not loud. They fell with the dignity of deep grief, echoing with the silence of everything unsaid. Her world had just cracked, and it would never be whole again. The next morning broke like a quiet hymn. The storm had passed, but its weight still hung in the air. Maya sat beside the prayer wheels, her eyes red from grief and sleeplessness. In the courtyard, saffron-robed monks chanted softly. The world was moving, but she was stuck in a fracture. Her fingers gripped the key tighter. What had he meant? The silence between wounds. She looked at the ancient wooden doors lining the eastern wall, each one worn, each holding stories. Her father's voice echoed in memory. "There is a door the soul must open alone." She rose, hesitant. A monk noticed her movement, but said nothing. The path was hers now. Whatever waited behind the keyhole, it would either break her fully or begin to mend what life had splintered. She traced her fingers over the prayer wheel, letting it spin with gentle resistance. The whisper of its revolution reminded her of breath, of impermanence. Maya whispered, "Guide me." Her voice cracked like a broken string. The wind stirred her robes, and with it came the faint scent of juniper. The key in her lap seemed to hum, as if aware it had waited too long. Suddenly, her gaze locked onto a door different from the rest, carved with a lotus eye motif, matching the symbol on the key. Her pulse quickened. It was as though the mountain itself had held its breath. She rose and stepped toward it. Her father had hidden this. Not out of cruelty, but protection. She could feel it now, not just pain, but something older. A lesson. A test. And she was ready to bleed for understanding. Maya stood before the door, key in hand. The wood looked ancient but untouched by time, dark, firm, sacred. Her heart pounded like a warning drum. "Am I ready to know?" she whispered. No answer. Only wind and the quiet chant of monks in the distance. She inserted the key. It resisted, then yielded with a click that echoed through her spine. The door creaked open into a small hidden chamber. A single cushion, an incense bowl, and on the wall, a mural of her father, younger, kneeling before the Buddha under a tree of fire. She gasped. This was his truth, buried from the world. Her hands covered her mouth. Grief and wonder danced in her chest like twin flames. The silence in the room wasn't empty, it was holy. Inside the chamber the mural whispered truths. Her father's painted eyes looked serene, but beneath them was a line etched into stone. To heal, one must stop seeking the wound. Maya knelt. The incense bowl still held the faintest scent, his scent. She touched the cushion and closed her eyes. Her breath slowed. For the first time in years, she didn't chase answers. She simply existed. Her grief didn't vanish. It rooted her. She began to weep, not from sorrow, but surrender. And the room in its sacred silence embraced her. No voice came. No spirit appeared. But something shifted. The ache had shape now. And in that shape, she found the beginning of peace. The days passed like whispered mantras. Maya stayed at the monastery, moving through its stone corridors with a quiet reverence. The pain had not dulled, it had changed form. Now it hovered like mist, always present, never overwhelming. She began helping the monks in small tasks, sweeping the grounds, boiling tea, lighting incense. One morning, while brushing fallen leaves from the courtyard, an old monk approached her. His eyes were deep, clouded by age but clear with knowing. "You carry heavy silence," he said gently. Maya nodded, unable to form words. "You do not have to speak," he added. "But you must listen. The mountain has waited longer than you." That night, she sat beneath a Bodhi tree, hands folded, and let the wind speak. It whispered, not in answers, but in presence, in breath, in the stillness between one heartbeat and the next. Each morning, Maya began to rise before dawn. She followed the monks in their walking meditations, a slow, deliberate rhythm that grounded her. Her thoughts, once sharp and chaotic, softened into stillness. One morning, as dew clung to the edges of leaves, she paused on a narrow trail overlooking the valley. Mist blanketed the world below. In the hush, she felt her father's presence, not as a ghost, but as part of the breath of the mountain. "You are not gone," she whispered. "You became the air I breathe." Her heart trembled, but didn't break. Instead, it opened. That moment didn't erase the pain. It made space for it. Maya closed her eyes. The key still hung from her neck, now warm with skin and memory. It was no longer a symbol of absence. It had become a promise to return, to herself. The monastery bell rang, deep, long, resonant. Maya sat in the meditation hall, legs crossed, eyes closed. The silence inside her was no longer empty. It was vast, like the sky behind her eyelids. Flashes of old wounds came and went. Her father leaving, her childhood questions, the cold birthdays, but they no longer consumed her. They passed like clouds. In their place came something she had never known, the power of being with herself. The monks chanted softly behind her, but their words were only music. She didn't need the language. She needed the stillness. And in that stillness, she met a version of herself not defined by hurt, but by survival. Not by loss, but by endurance. Her breath slowed. And for the first time, she didn't fear what came next. She welcomed it, whatever it might be. One evening, Maya sat across from the elder monk who had first spoken to her. Between them rested a small clay cup of tea, steam curling in the twilight air. "Why did he hide the key?" she asked. The monk smiled gently. "Because truth is dangerous in the wrong season. A seed must fall only when the soil is ready." Maya held the cup with both hands, letting its warmth speak. "He should have told me," she said. "Should he?" the monk replied. "Would you have listened?" She stared into the tea, the reflection of firelight flickering across its surface. The truth pierced, quiet and deep. No, she hadn't been ready. Not until now. "Grief makes us greedy," the monk added. "We demand closure when the soul needs openness." She bowed her head, whispering, "Then I will learn to be open." That night, Maya returned to the hidden chamber. The mural hadn't changed, but she had. She bowed to her father's painted form not as a daughter seeking apology, but as a soul honoring another. She sat on the cushion, lit the incense, and closed her eyes. The key lay in her palm. "I forgive you," she whispered. The words didn't feel forced. They flowed like a river that had been waiting for a dam to break. And with them came memory, not of pain but of presence. The way he used to hum, the warmth of his hand guiding hers, the silence they once shared watching the stars. The chamber became a sanctuary, not because it offered answers, but because it offered stillness. Maya breathed. In, no. Out. The key glowed faintly in the incense light. And for the first time, she felt like it belonged to her. Maya sat beside the monastery's lotus pond as evening fell. The stillness around her couldn't quiet the new turbulence inside. Her dreams had shifted, now filled with fractured images of her father screaming, doors slamming, her younger self running through empty rooms. The serenity she had begun to taste was cracking under the weight of buried memories. "Why did he leave me?" she whispered to the pond's reflection. Was I not enough? Her voice wavered with shame. The monks passed silently behind her, but one paused and laid a flower at her side. No words. Just presence. Maya didn't look up. Her hands trembled. She realized she wasn't fighting grief anymore. She was fighting herself. The version of her that had been built on abandonment was now beginning to fall apart. And that kind of breaking doesn't come quietly. Later that night, the nightmares returned with ferocity. Maya woke with a strangled cry, drenched in sweat. In her dream, she saw her father turning away from her at a train station, faceless, voiceless, unreachable. She wandered the monastery halls like a ghost, breath uneven. The incense couldn't soothe her now. In the reflection of a window pane, she saw not herself, but the little girl who waited at the door year after year. That child still screamed in silence. Maya pressed her forehead to the cold glass. I was just a child, she whispered. The words cracked her open. She sank to the floor. For the first time, she allowed herself to rage, not at her father, but at the injustice of innocence lost. Her body trembled, not in grief, but in reclaiming. The path to peace, she realized, led straight through fire. Morning came, but not with peace. Maya sat across from a novice monk in the dining hall, barely touching her rice. Her eyes were hollow. Do you believe in forgiveness? She asked. The monk looked up surprised. It's not belief, he said. It's surrender. Maya scoffed. And what if the wound is still open? The monk gently replied, then forgiveness is not for them. It's for the part of you that's still bleeding. She fell silent. Those words were a blade that cut her truth loose. She wasn't holding back forgiveness, she was holding on to her identity as the one who was left. If she let go of that, who would she be? But another part of her whispered, free. Her grip on the rice bowl loosened. Her anger had shape now, and with shape came the beginning of understanding. She returned to the mural room, but this time her steps were heavy. She stared at her father's painted image, rage simmering beneath her skin. You taught others how to find peace, she said aloud. But you never gave it to me. Her voice echoed against stone. She felt ridiculous speaking to paint, but it was all she had. Her breath heaved. You abandoned me. The words burst from her like a dam breaking. You ran away from your pain, and left me to carry it. She sank to her knees, tears streaming. You were supposed to stay. The mural did not reply. The silence offered no comfort, only reflection. And in that mirror of stillness, Maya saw not a father, but a man. Flawed, frightened, unhuman. Her fury flickered, replaced by something sharper. The truth. That night, the wind howled through the monastery like a grieving spirit. Maya climbed the stone steps to the rooftop, the key gripped tight in her fist. She screamed into the darkness, raw, unfiltered, sacred. No words, only sound. The sky held her sorrow. When her voice broke, she dropped to her knees, exhausted. The key fell beside her with a metallic clink. She stared at it, the symbol of everything unsaid, and everything she was now beginning to face. This pain, she said softly, is mine now, not yours. The stars flickered overhead. For the first time, she didn't feel like a lost child screaming for someone to come back. She felt like a woman standing at the edge of her own becoming. And in that edge, she found something like power. The following morning, Maya was summoned by the elder monk. He held a small box, wrapped in faded red silk. Your father left this before his passing, he said. He asked that it be given only when you opened the door. Her breath caught. With trembling hands, she unwrapped the silk and opened the lid. Inside was a journal, her father's. The pages were worn, ink faded, but his handwriting was unmistakable. She turned to the first page. To my daughter, whose silence I caused, and whose strength I never deserved. Maya froze. The world around her muted. He wrote to me, she whispered. The monk nodded. He never stopped. Her hands clutched the book to her chest. In that moment, everything she thought she knew cracked. The man she resented had tried to reach her, in ink if not in presence. It changed nothing. And it changed everything. Back in her chamber, Maya lit a candle and opened the journal fully. Page after page bore her father's pain, regret, and longing. I didn't know how to be a father with a shattered heart. He spoke of his guilt, his spiritual calling, and his inability to bridge both worlds. I left not to run, but to keep you from inheriting my wounds. Maya wept. These weren't excuses. They were confessions. Real. Human. Wow. Messy. And in their honesty, she saw the man behind the silence. She pressed her fingers to the ink, tracing his words like she might feel his warmth through the page. You were always my peace. I just didn't know how to keep it. The ache in her chest shifted. What she thought was abandonment now pulsed with tragic love. She didn't know whether to forgive or scream. So, she did both. That evening, she walked to the Bodhi tree and read the journal aloud, page by page. The wind carried her voice into the twilight as if the mountain itself listened. I wanted you to hate me, so you wouldn't follow me into my darkness. His words struck like lightning and healed like rain. Each sentence peeled back layers of resentment she didn't even know she carried. The monks passed by quietly, none interrupting. This was her ritual now, her rite of reclamation. As she read, her voice grew steadier. Her pain became language. Her sorrow became sound. And as the final words passed her lips, I loved you more than I could bear. The wind fell still. A hush, sacred and complete, wrapped around her. She closed the book. Not everything needed to be understood. Some truths only needed to be heard. In the days that followed, Maya read the journal, again and again. Not to relive the pain, but to understand the man she never got to know. She began to annotate the margins, writing to him as if he could read her now. I was angry for so long. But now I see you were trying to save me in the only way you knew. With every page, the distance between them shrank, not in time, but in truth. She didn't absolve him. She still bore scars. But she no longer felt the need to wear them as armor. One morning, she wrapped the journal in fresh silk and placed it on the altar beside his mural. We carry our ancestors not by blood alone, she whispered, but by the stories we choose to remember. And with that, she bowed, not as a daughter mourning a father, but as a soul bowing to another soul. That night, Maya dreamed of her father, not the one who left, but the one who listened. In the dream, they sat beneath the same Bodhi tree. He looked younger, peaceful, unburdened. No words were spoken, just presence. She reached for his hand, and he let her hold it. The warmth of his touch was unlike anything she'd known. She smiled, and so did he. And then slowly he faded, not into death, but into light. When Maya awoke, her face was wet with tears, but her chest was light. She walked to the temple courtyard just as the first rays of dawn touched the sky. The world was quiet, but not empty. She sat, key still around her neck, and whispered, I found you. The wind stirred the prayer flags. And this time, they felt like a reply. Maya returned to the meditation hall, but something within her had shifted. She no longer sought silence as an escape, but as confrontation. She sat in the center of the room, alone this time. No monks. No chants. Only her breath and the echo of her past. She placed the key in front of her, like an offering. Her mind pulled her inward, into memories too sharp to hold before. Her father walking away. Her mother's absence. The ache of birthdays uncelebrated. This time, she didn't push them aside. She let them flood her. She felt the shame, the fear, the loneliness. But she stayed seated. Still. Present. Her spine straightened not from discipline, but from self-trust. Her tears came freely. But they did not break her. They baptized her. In that sacred stillness, Maya faced not her father. She faced herself, and did not look away. The next morning Maya stood before the monks and spoke, not in grief but in declaration. "I came here seeking answers," she said. "But I found something better. I found the pieces of myself I buried long ago." Her voice was steady, her gaze unwavering. The monks listened, faces open and still. "I no longer seek to forgive my father to make him worthy. I forgive him to free myself." Her hands unclenched, her chest lifted with breath that felt earned. One monk bowed, the others followed. Maya returned the bow, not as a student, but as an equal walking her own path. No thunder broke the sky. No divine light crowned her. But something deeper happened, something only she could feel. A burden she'd carried so long, she'd forgotten it had weight, finally fell away. That afternoon, she wandered deeper into the monastery than ever before. At the far end of the sacred grounds, she found a hidden path winding down toward the valley. With the key around her neck and the journal pressed to her chest, she walked barefoot. Each step felt like prayer. She reached a lone fig tree by a cliff's edge and sat beneath it. The valley below stretched endlessly, rivers glinting in sunlight. She opened the journal one final time and read the last passage. "When you read this, I'll be gone. But no, my final wish was for you to live, not in memory, but in full bloom." She closed the book, smiling through tears. For the first time, she understood. Her journey wasn't about understanding her father. It was about reclaiming herself. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Maya lit incense beneath the tree. She whispered a mantra she hadn't learned from the monks but from within. "I release you. I reclaim me." The smoke curled upward, as if carrying her words to unseen heights. She took the key from her neck and placed it on the earth, not as surrender, but as offering. "You brought me to the door," she said aloud. "But I walked through it." She smiled, not out of joy, but liberation. No part of her needed saving anymore. She rose, dusted off her robes, and turned her face to the fading sun. The past had shaped her, but it no longer held her. She was no longer the girl seeking her father. She was the woman who had found herself. That night, Maya stood at the monastery gate, bag on her shoulder, barefoot still. The path beyond was unknown, but she did not flinch. The monks gathered in silence to bless her journey. The elder stepped forward. "You walk alone now, but never apart," he said. Maya bowed deeply. Her heart pulsed with something new. Not longing, not grief, but presence. "Thank you," she said, "for not saving me." The elder smiled. "You saved yourself." With that, she stepped into the darkened trail, the stars above guiding her. No final lesson. No grand revelation. Only this: she had been the key all along. And as she disappeared into the forest edge, even the mountains seemed to exhale. Maya walked for days. Through cedar forests, across rocky streams, and past sleeping villages where no one knew her name. She didn't seek a destination. She walked because her soul had been still for so long. It now craved motion. One morning, she came upon a small village where a child cried alone by a well. Without hesitation, Maya knelt and cradled the girl. "Are you lost?" she asked. The child nodded. Maya didn't offer platitudes. She simply held her. And in that moment, something clicked deep within. She had become what she never had, a presence that stayed. She looked into the child's eyes and saw herself. Not the girl who had been abandoned, but the woman who remained. And she whispered, "It's okay to cry. It means your heart is awake." The child stopped shaking. So did she. She spent the next weeks in that village, not as a teacher or a healer, but as a listener. People brought their stories to her, quiet griefs, ancient wounds, small joys. She listened with the patience of someone who had once begged to be heard. In the evenings she sat by the river, letting the current sing its endless chant. One night, an elder sat beside her and asked, "You've lost someone, haven't you?" Maya smiled faintly. "No, I found him in losing him." The elder nodded. Ah, then you're no longer broken, you're open. Maya looked at the water. Yes, she said. Open. The word echoed inside her like a prayer. She no longer feared pain. It had become a companion. Not an enemy, but a gatekeeper to depth. And in that depth, she now lived. One evening, Maya was invited to share her story by the village fire. She hesitated. Not because she feared the telling, but because she now honored its weight. When she finally spoke, it wasn't polished or poetic. It was raw. Real. Wah. I carried grief like it was identity, she said. Until I realized it was only a door, and I had the key. No one interrupted. The fire crackled, stars blinked overhead. We don't heal by forgetting, she continued. We heal by remembering who we were before the pain. Her voice didn't tremble. She was no longer reciting trauma. She was transforming. The villagers nodded, some with tears, others with awe. Maya didn't speak to impress. She spoke to unburden. And when she finished, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was reverent. As the days passed, Maya began carving a wooden statue, a woman seated in meditation, hands open, eyes closed in peace. It was not of the Buddha. It was of herself. Each stroke of the chisel was deliberate, filled with intention. She didn't aim for perfection. She aimed for truth. Villagers passed by and watched in silence, not out of reverence but resonance. One child asked, "Is she sleeping?" Maya smiled. "No, she's remembering." The statue wasn't just art, it was testament. A relic of the journey from fracture to form. When it was complete, she placed it in the village square with no nameplate, no story. Those who needed it would understand. And for those who didn't, she held no need to explain. Some truths don't demand to be known. They simply are. One morning, Maya stood at the edge of the village as a caravan prepared to leave. A traveler asked, "Where will you go next?" She looked to the horizon and smiled. "Wherever silence waits." She carried no map, no plan. Only the journal, now wrapped and worn, and the memory of a key she no longer needed. Her journey was not to a destination, but into presence. As she walked, her shadow moved beside her, not ominous but whole. The road ahead was open, and so was she. The mountains in the distance shimmered in morning light, their silence inviting. Maya didn't look back. She didn't have to. The woman who once chased answers now carried them quietly within. And as she disappeared into the new day, she left behind not a legacy, but a light. Maya entered a town where no one knew her past. There were no monks, no temples, only cobblestone streets and children laughing near market stalls. She passed unnoticed, wrapped in simplicity. No one asked where she had come from. And for the first time, she didn't need to explain. She watched a potter shaping clay and smiled, recognizing herself in the turning wheel. That evening, she sat beneath a tree in the town square. A woman nearby wept quietly, face in her hands. Maya said nothing. She sat beside her, offered her presence like breath. Minutes passed. Then the woman looked up. "How do you survive sorrow?" she asked. Maya replied, "By no longer trying to outrun it." The woman didn't speak again, but she leaned into the silence. And in that shared space, healing began, not as miracle, but as invitation. Days passed, and Maya became known not as a sage, but as someone who stayed. She helped elders carry firewood. She taught children how to sit still. She planted herbs near the healer's hut. People whispered, "She listens like the wind, soft but always there." She spoke less, smiled more. Not because she lacked thoughts, but because her silence now held meaning. One morning, a boy ran to her with a broken kite. Instead of fixing it, she taught him how to rebuild it. "But it won't fly the same," he said. Maya nodded. "Nothing broken ever does. It flies differently. And sometimes, that's better." The boy grinned and ran into the field. Maya watched him go, heart full, not of answers, but of presence. That, she now knew, was the real key, to love without needing to understand everything. One evening, a traveling monk stopped in town. He had heard whispers of a woman with quiet wisdom. When he found Maya tending to a garden, he approached and bowed. "Are you the one they call the peaceful heart?" Maya smiled. "I am a heart that once shattered." He asked if she would teach. She paused. "Only if they are ready to unlearn." He nodded and sat beside her in the soil. Together, they planted basil. No sutras, no sermons, just hands in earth. Maya didn't lead him. She welcomed him. And in that wordless ritual, something sacred passed between them. A lesson that couldn't be written. When he left, he said, "You've become what the mountain shaped you to be." Maya looked up at the sky and replied, "No, I became what I allowed myself to become." That night, Maya sat alone at the hilltop behind the village. No temple walls, no incense, just stars and wind. She opened the journal once more, now delicate from use. Flipping to the final page, she wrote, "You were the lock. I was the key. And now, the door no longer exists." She closed the book, kissed its cover, and buried it beneath a newly planted tree. The roots would hold her story now. Not for memory, but for growth. As she stood, she didn't feel small beneath the sky. She felt vast. She whispered, "Thank you for leaving." It no longer sounded bitter. It rang with truth. She turned toward the village below, lights flickering like fireflies. Peace was not a place. It was a posture. And now, she stood in it fully. At dawn, the villagers gathered at the edge of the square where Maya once sat. But she was gone. No footprints. No farewell. Only the scent of sandalwood, and a small wooden carving left behind, a woman seated in stillness, her palms open, her heart radiant. No one spoke. They understood. Maya hadn't vanished. She had dissolved into every space she'd once occupied, into every silence she'd honored, into every wound she had turned to wisdom. Far away, on a forest path unknown, Maya walked in peace. Not because the world had changed, but because she had. And as the sun rose, bathing the land in gold, her final truth echoed, not in sound, but in soul. Peace isn't found at the end of pain. It's found when you stop fearing its presence.